You're here, but maybe you don't know why. You didn't come for the title. You didn't come for curiosity. You came because something inside you aches, something wordless, something you've been trying to ignore. It creeps in when you're alone, when the notifications go silent, when your laughter feels borrowed, when you stop pretending you're okay. That's when it returns, that quiet whisper that won't leave you alone. Why are they ignoring me? But that isn't the real question, not the one your soul is trying to ask. That's the surface level question, the one you use to avoid something much deeper, because deep down you already know this isn't about a message that never arrived, or a reply that stayed in drafts, or a call that was never made. This is about you, about how you've started to vanish in the mirror, about how you've become a version of yourself you don't recognize anymore. Polite, predictable, pleasing, diminished. You keep yourself busy, texting people you don't care about, posting stories you don't mean, pretending to smile when all you're really doing is waiting for them, for a sign, a reaction, a digital heartbeat that proves they remember you, that you still matter, that you weren't so easily replaced. But here's the part no one says out loud. They didn't leave accidentally. They didn't forget you by mistake. They chose this. And you left the door cracked open, just in case they return, in case they remember, in case it wasn't really the end. You call it hope, but it's not hope. It's emotional submission. It's standing still while the rest of you wants to run. It's handing over your dignity in the hope that anyone might notice. But here's what they are doing. They're not silent. They're speaking with precision. They're saying, you don't get to choose anymore. And the worst part isn't what they're doing to you. It's what you're doing to yourself in response. You start editing yourself, smoothing your edges, shrinking your light. You become your own ghost. Careful, cautious, controlled. All to become more likable, more acceptable, more returnable. But I'll tell you now, no one ever came back for the version of you that erased itself. They come back only when they can't ignore who you are. So ask yourself this. If you've learned to ignore yourself, how do you expect anyone else to do the opposite? That ache you feel isn't just longing. It's your soul trying to wake you up. Not to bring them back, but to bring you back. Because the longer you wait, the more pieces you give away. And if you're not careful, there will come a moment, quiet, sharp, irreversible, when you won't recognize what's left. This is not just about being ignored. This is about identity. This is about power. And this is just the beginning. Because in the parts that follow, we'll talk about the unseen damage, the illusions you cling to, and the quiet decisions that cost you your entire self. But for now, just sit with this one truth. They didn't forget you. You forgot yourself. You think it's about them, about the way they left, the way they went silent, the way they moved on like you were never there. But it isn't. Because if you look closely, really closely, you'll see something darker. It's not them you're obsessed with. It's being seen. That moment when their eyes were on you, when their words made you feel like you mattered, when you felt real. And now that they're gone, you're chasing that feeling like it was oxygen. Like without their gaze, you don't know how to breathe. This isn't love. This is addiction. An addiction to validation, to being chosen, to existing in someone else's world. Because you've forgotten how to belong in your own. You don't miss them. You miss who you became in their presence. That version of you that felt alive, wanted, admired, even if only briefly. And the moment they withdrew, something cracked. Not just your heart, your identity. Because here's the raw truth. You built too much of yourself around how they saw you. And now, without their eyes, you feel invisible. That's why you keep posting. That's why you keep adjusting your tone. That's why you read too deeply into silence. Hold on to memories like lifelines. And check your phone in moments you swore you'd move on. You're not reaching out to them. You're reaching out to yourself. The part of you that vanished when they did. But listen closely. No one, no matter how magnetic, deserves to be the mirror through which you recognize your worth. You became a performer in your own life, crafting captions, smiling for screens, hoping one perfectly timed update might stir something in them, might pull them back into your orbit, might make them remember what they forgot. But this is the tragedy. The more you fight to be seen, the more invisible you become. Because real presence doesn't come from performance. It comes from stillness, from not needing to prove anything anymore. And yet here you are, hoping your ache will be loud enough to bring them back. But pain is not a microphone. It's a mirror. And what it's reflecting is your deepest fear. That without them you're not enough. But that's a lie. Your shadow is feeding you. And Carl Jung would tell you this. What you seek in them is what you've lost in yourself. And what you refuse to face will continue to control you. So pause. Look at the version of yourself that's been bending, shrinking, rearranging, just to be seen. Ask, who am I when no one's watching? Who am I when no one is choosing me? Because that is the version you need to find. The one who doesn't have to scream to exist. The one who doesn't need to be picked to feel powerful. You are not an audition. You are not a placeholder. You are not the aftermath of someone's departure. You are a beginning, not an echo. So let them ignore you. Not because you don't care, but because you finally remembered who you are without their eyes on you. And when you do, when you finally stop needing to be seen, you'll become someone no silence can erase. You're sitting in silence, but inside, there's a storm. And instead of facing it, you build a shelter made of stories, little narratives, soft lies, comfortable explanations. He must be busy. Maybe he didn't see it. He's just scared of his feelings. He needs space. He'll come back. Sound familiar? Of course it does. We've all done it. We've all rewritten reality to protect ourselves from the pain of being unwanted. But here's what no one tells you. That story is killing you. Not with violence, not with drama, but with slow erosion of your clarity, of your self-respect, of your ability to tell the truth. Because the moment you lie to yourself to justify their silence, you abandon yourself a little more. And that's where the real wound begins. Not in what they did, but in what you told yourself to make it okay. Carl Jung called this the danger of the unconscious. What you deny in yourself grows. What you avoid controls you. And right now, your avoidance is driving every choice you make. Because the truth is brutal. It says they didn't care enough to stay. But your ego, your pride, it can't breathe in that truth. So it creates a softer version. A fantasy you can survive inside. A world where maybe, just maybe, you're still important. But the cost, you stop living in the world as it is. You begin living in the world as you hope it could be. And every second you spend there, you're stepping further from reality, and deeper into pain that has no resolution. This is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. When your heart believes one thing, but the facts scream something else. They say, I love you, in your memory. But now, their silence says, you don't matter. And instead of choosing the truth, you build a bridge of excuses, desperate to get back to a version of the past that no longer exists. But here's the irony. That comforting story you keep telling yourself, it's not comforting anymore. It's your prison. Because every time you whisper, maybe, you delay your healing. You avoid your power. You ignore your truth. And Jung said it best. What you resist, persists. The more you resist the fact that they left you behind, the deeper that pain carves into you. So let's stop here, just for a moment. Strip away the fantasy. Let the illusion fall. Ask yourself, without flinching, what if they're not confused? What if they're just done? And what if that's okay? Because maybe the goal was never to get them back. Maybe the goal was to find out what you're made of, when no one is coming to save you. This is the lie we tell, that holding on is strength. But sometimes, the strongest thing you'll ever do, is let go of the version of the story, where you were chosen. And in that letting go, you finally stop chasing love that hurts. You stop fighting to matter in places where your presence is ignored. You stop needing to be explained. You start needing to be free. And that right there, is the beginning of everything they couldn't give you. It starts quietly. A few missed messages, a delayed response, a sudden shift in tone. You tell yourself it's nothing, that people get busy, that it'll pass. But deep down, a part of you knows, this isn't a phase, it's a pattern, a choice, a quiet removal. And while you're still trying to make sense of it, while you're searching for answers, they've already made their move. They've gone silent, but not absent. Because silence isn't always emptiness. Sometimes, silence is a strategy. And this is the most dangerous truth of all. They're not ignoring you by accident. They're ignoring you on purpose. To control the story. To control you. Because here's the twisted reality. Silence, when used by someone who knows its power, becomes manipulation. And you're still checking your phone. Still drafting the perfect message. Still wondering what you did wrong. But they're not wondering anything. They know exactly what they're doing. They're watching from a distance. How far you'll go to keep the connection alive. How much of yourself you'll hand over in exchange for a breadcrumb. And the more you try, the more they pull back. Because it keeps you on the hook. Not out of love, out of control. See, there's a part of them that likes knowing you're still there. Still hoping, still waiting. You've become their backup plan. Their emotional insurance. Someone they can return to. Not because they care, but because they can. And if they come back, it won't be for closure. It'll be to see if the door's still open. If the control is still intact. That's not affection. That's manipulation in disguise. That's not love. That's ego feeding on your uncertainty. And you keep telling yourself, it means something. That maybe the silence is because they're hurting too. That maybe this distance is the beginning of a deeper understanding. But no, this distance is the evidence. The evidence that you've been reduced from a person to a test. A test of how much someone can disappear and still be welcomed back, like nothing happened. Carl Jung said it best. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And right now, they're avoiding themselves by ignoring you. They don't want to look in the mirror, so they let you carry the weight of the silence alone. But the real danger is when you agree to it, when you internalize the silence, when you start questioning your worth instead of their behavior, when you become so hungry for their attention, you forget to question the quality of their presence. Ask yourself, do they miss you, or do they just miss knowing they could come back whenever they wanted? Because if your absence doesn't make them reach for you, but only reminds them they still have you, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance, a one-person show, with no audience, no applause, and no script that ends well. And that's the tragedy. You deserve someone who chooses you with clarity, not someone who tests your loyalty with silence. You deserve someone who faces discomfort, not someone who hides behind distance. You deserve more than delayed texts and recycled excuses. You deserve peace. But first, you have to recognize the manipulation for what it is. Not an unanswered question, but a calculated move. Because once you see it, you can stop reacting to it. And that, my friend, is how you begin to take your power back. Not by being louder, not by proving your worth, but by choosing silence that comes from strength, not submission. There's a part of you that no one sees. Not your friends, not your family, not even the version of yourself you show the world. It's hidden, repressed, tucked into the corners of your psyche. And when someone ignores you, it doesn't just break your heart, it awakens your shadow. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the dark, unaccepted part of your personality. Not evil, not wrong, just hidden. Made of fears you never confronted, needs you never voiced, wounds you were too ashamed to name. And now that they're gone, now that you're invisible, you can feel that shadow clawing for the light. Suddenly your calm turns to panic. Your confidence collapses. You start doing things you promised you'd never do. Texting again, rereading old conversations, checking when they were last online. Why? Because your shadow isn't silent anymore. It's screaming. Prove that you matter. Prove that you're enough. Prove that you're still lovable. You're not chasing them. You're chasing the version of yourself that felt worthy in their presence. That's the wound. Not that they left, but that they took something with them. Something you thought belonged to you. Your worth. But here's what Jung would tell you. The shadow isn't the enemy. The enemy is the way you run from it. Because every time you pretend you're fine, every time you try to be stronger than you feel, every time you say I'm over it, but your stomach knots when they don't reply, you bury the shadow deeper. And what you bury doesn't die. It controls you. That's why you keep making the same mistakes. Reaching out when you shouldn't. Waiting when there's nothing left to wait for. Convincing yourself that a silence so loud must still mean something. But here's the brutal truth. You're not waiting for love. You're waiting to be rescued from yourself. From the part of you that feels small, forgotten, unseen. But let me say this with no softness, no illusions. No one is coming to save you from that. Not them. Not anyone. Because the only person who can face your shadow is you. And until you do, until you sit in that discomfort and say, yes, I feel abandoned. Yes, I feel unworthy. Yes, I'm afraid no one will ever stay. Until then, you will keep dancing in circles around the same pain. And the worst part, sometimes, they don't ignore you because they hate you. They ignore you because they know they still have you. And if they come back, it's not always because they love you. It's because they want to see if they can still make you move. With a word, with a like, with a breadcrumb. That's not a relationship. That's emotional control wearing the mask of a second chance. So what now? You stop waiting. You stop shrinking. You stop being a shadow trying to get noticed by someone who already closed their eyes. Because if you keep ignoring your shadow, it will keep choosing for you quietly, destructively, without mercy. But if you face it, if you finally look that pain in the eye without flinching, You'll discover something you never expected, that your power isn't in being seen. It's in seeing yourself completely, even in the dark. It doesn't happen all at once. You don't just wake up one day and realize you're imprisoned. It's slower, quieter, almost gentle. A silence here, a compromise there, a single ignored message that turns into 100, and somewhere in between, you stop noticing the shift, because you've already adapted to the absence. You keep showing up, you keep waiting, you keep leaving the door unlocked, just in case they want to come back. And that's how the walls close in. Not because they built them, because you did with every excuse, every delay, every story you told yourself to avoid the truth. This isn't a heartbreak. This is a habit of staying loyal to someone who already walked away. A habit of accepting silence as half love. A habit of hoping that if you just stay good, stay soft, stay small enough, they'll remember you. But here's the truth, the one no one tells you. You're not stuck because they won't love you. You're stuck because you won't stop loving them in the way that erases yourself. And that's not devotion. That's attachment. It feels like love. It looks like love. But it isn't. Because love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself to be worthy. Love doesn't silence you, doesn't make you beg, doesn't vanish without explanation, and return with nothing more than convenience. This is something else, something far more dangerous. Attachment disguised as love. And the longer you stay in it, the more you lose. Not just time, not just energy. You lose your center, your clarity, your ability to choose what is right for you, not what merely reminds you of the past. Carl Jung spoke of this, of the danger of becoming trapped by your own unconscious needs, of confusing familiarity with truth, of mistaking pain for meaning. Because here's what's really happening. You're not in love with them anymore. You're in love with the version of you that existed when they loved you. That memory, that echo, that rush, that's what you're chasing. And every time you reach for it, every time you respond to their silence with another message, another hope, you move further from reality and deeper into illusion. And illusions are not harmless. They keep you tied to someone who's already gone. They keep you circling the same emptiness, calling it patience. They keep you in a self-made prison, with no one holding the key but you. So ask yourself, why are you still offering presence where you only receive absence? Why are you still emotionally open to someone who has emotionally locked the door? It's not strength. It's not love. It's silent self-destruction. Because here's the thing, real love will not require you to wait in emotional starvation, hoping for scraps. Real love does not confuse attention with commitment. Real love chooses you, fully, clearly, consistently. And anything less than that is not love. It's a lesson. But you still have a choice. To keep circling that absence, or to choose presence, your own, to stop waiting to be remembered, and start remembering yourself. Because once you do, once you step outside this emotional prison, there's a kind of peace waiting on the other side that no silence can steal. Stop. Just stop. Take a breath. Right here. Look at what you're doing. The texts, the posts, the subtle hints, the indirect stories you hope they'll see, the way you adjust your tone, your timing, your words, all for someone who hasn't looked in your direction in days, maybe weeks. You've turned their silence into your script. Every move you make now is a performance. And the audience you're performing for isn't even watching. But that's the worst part, because somewhere along the way, you started performing not just for them, but for yourself. You've convinced yourself that if you just say it right, look right, act right, they'll come back. That your pain can be transformed into poetry. That your longing can become strategy. That this version of you, the quiet, controlled, careful version, might finally be the one they'll want. But it won't be. Because it was never about the version of you. It was always about their absence, their avoidance, their unwillingness to stay. And yet you keep dancing in their direction, hoping the music will pull them back. You keep trying to make silence say something other than what it really means. That they've moved on. But you can't fix this with another text. You can't resurrect what's already flatlined. Because when someone chooses distance, your performance becomes desperation. And desperation is not seductive. It's invisible, not because you're not enough, but because they've already stopped looking. Carl Jung said that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. And that's what this is. All this performing, all this pretending, all this adjusting, it's a distraction. a way to avoid sitting with the real wound, that someone you wanted to matter to doesn't care that they left you behind. And that hurts more than words can touch, more than any silence can describe. But here's the truth. The person who walked away doesn't come back, because you became more perfect. They only return when they remember something they can't ignore. But if you've already taught yourself to be ignorable, if you've erased the fire, the edge, the truth of who you are, then even if they return, it won't be you they're coming back to. It'll be the shell, the edit, the ghost of someone you used to be. So stop auditioning for a stage they left mid-scene. Stop crafting a performance for an audience that turned their back. You're not a show, you're a soul. And if someone needs you to dim, shrink, or perform just to stay interested, they're not your person. Because real connection doesn't need a script. It doesn't ask for rehearsals. It stays, even when the stage is dark and the curtains are down. You deserve that kind of love. But you'll never find it as long as you keep performing for someone who left during intermission. So take off the mask. Stop the act. Let the stage go quiet. And watch what happens when you start living for you again. There comes a moment. Not loud, not dramatic, not the kind that anyone else notices. But it happens. A moment where you realize, you have to choose. Not between staying or leaving. Not between texting or waiting. But between who you've become, and who you were meant to be. Because all this time, while you've been clinging to their silence, waiting for their return, making yourself small just to stay in their orbit, you've forgotten something far more important than them. Yourself. You forgot the version of you that didn't second-guess every word. The one that didn't need someone else's attention, just to feel visible. The one that laughed without checking who was watching. The one that stood tall, without begging for crumbs of affection. And now, you're at the edge. Right here, right now. And the question is simple, but life-changing. Do you keep waiting to be seen by someone who refuses to look? Or do you become someone who no longer needs to be seen to know they exist? Because that's the real power. Not in pulling them back, but in pulling yourself back. Back from the edge of erasure. Back from the performance. Back from the lie that says you're only worthy when someone else decides you are. Let them ignore you, not because you've given up, but because you've risen up. Because their silence no longer holds power over you. Because your worth no longer bends to their attention. Because your identity no longer fits inside the fragile box of their approval. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But you can't become that person if you keep shrinking every time someone pulls away. You can't find your truth while chasing someone else's validation. And you can't live in freedom while trapped in a story that wasn't written by your own hand. So this is it. Your moment. Your turning point. You can either keep standing at the doorway they left open, begging for their shadow to reappear. Or you can walk away, close the door behind you, and open another one that leads back to you. It won't be easy. There will be days you ache. Nights where the silence feels heavier than the words you never got to say. But I promise you this. Peace doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself fully, unapologetically, relentlessly. And when you do, you stop being the one who was ignored. You become the one who finally remembered their power. Because what you're searching for in them has always been waiting for you in you. So make the choice. Not for them, for you. And don't just walk away from their silence. Walk toward your voice. So you walked away. Maybe not with confidence. Maybe not with clarity. But you walked. You didn't get closure. You didn't get an apology. You didn't get the answers you deserved. What you got was silence. But here's the secret no one told you. That silence isn't the end. It's the beginning. Because now, in the stillness, something else begins to speak. Something deeper. Not the anxious voice that once begged for their return. Not the wounded ego that needed to be seen. But the voice you buried long ago. Your own. And it doesn't ask why did they leave. It asks, why did I forget who I was when they did? Because that's the real wound. Not that they vanished, but that you vanished with them. Piece by piece. You stopped doing things you loved. You stopped dressing for yourself. You stopped laughing the way you used to. Even your silence changed. It became heavier, lonelier, more desperate. But now the silence is yours. It's no longer a punishment. It's a space, a canvas. And for the first time in a long time, you get to choose what you fill it with. So start small, not with declarations or dramatic reinventions. Start with one quiet truth. I don't need to be chosen to have value. Then build from there. Say no without guilt. Take up space without apology. Feel joy without explanation. Return to what made you feel alive before you tied your joy to someone else's attention. Because that's where you find your power again. In the mundane, in the ordinary, in the quiet habits of becoming. You're not rebuilding for revenge. You're not growing so they'll see what they lost. You're growing because you finally understand. You were never meant to shrink to be loved. You were meant to expand to be free. And yes, some days will feel hollow. There will be mornings when you reach for your phone out of habit, when the ache sneaks in during the quiet moments. Healing isn't linear, it's messy, it's slow, it's real. But so are you. And every time you choose yourself, every time you say no more to the people, thoughts and patterns that kept you small, you reclaim a little more of the self you abandoned to be loved. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." So stop dreaming of them. Wake up to you, to the strength you forgot you had, to the beauty that was never tied to their approval, to the life that doesn't wait for someone to return. It moves, breathes, thrives, without needing permission. You're not waiting anymore. You're rebuilding. And the person emerging, they don't beg, they don't chase, they don't perform, they choose, they become, they return to themselves. So here you are, not at the end of a story, but at the beginning of something you never knew you needed, yourself. You've walked through the ache, you've stared into the silence, you've felt the weight of waiting, hoping, reaching, and finally letting go. And now, a different kind of quiet has arrived. Not the silence they gave you, the silence you chose. A silence that no longer begs to be broken. A silence that doesn't need to prove anything. A silence that feels like peace. Because here's the final truth, the one that doesn't sting anymore, but sets you free. It was never about them. It was always about who you became in their absence. And now that the noise is gone, now that the hunger for their attention has faded, you can finally hear what's been whispering beneath it all. You are not someone to be chased. You are not someone to be explained. You are not someone who only exists when chosen. You are a whole universe. You are depth. You are stillness. You are fire. And you don't need someone else's recognition to validate your glow. Carl Jung believed that the greatest journey isn't outward, it's inward. Not to the person who walked away, but to the parts of yourself that you walked away from to keep them close. So now, walk back. Return to the laughter that doesn't need an audience. Return to the dreams you once buried for someone else's comfort. Return to the girl, the boy, the soul who was always enough, even before they left, even when no one was watching. Because the truth is, they didn't abandon you. They just gave you the space to remember yourself, and what a gift that is. So don't wait for closure. Don't wait for the apology. Don't wait for their return to validate your worth. You are the closure. You are the apology you needed. You are the home you were looking for in them. Let them go. Let them become a chapter in a book that no longer defines your story. Because the next pages, they belong to you. Not as the one who was ignored. Not as the one who broke. But as the one who woke up. The one who stood in the ashes of what they thought was love, and built something unshakable, self. So walk forward. No grand announcement, no final message, just the quiet power of a soul who no longer needs to be seen, because they've finally seen themselves. This isn't the end, this is your return.